thank you to everybody for attending today. Kind of for a last minute announcement, we decided to kind of postpone for one day. In Italy, this meeting was yesterday, but we thought that with the low temperatures and the rains and the timing and the measurement that growers were taking, more growers would be able to share that information with Terence during the weekend, during Monday, Memorial Day weekend. So I think it was a better idea to wait and see and be here with the last meeting that we had in the region with the rescue thinning meeting. So with that, I want to thank you, Terence, for being with us during the entire chemical thinning season, and please keep going.
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon now. It's a pleasure to be back to talk about thinning. This is the last of our series for this year, and we'll focus a lot on what could be done in the next few days if things didn't go well for you. But I want to begin the presentation by just suggesting that I think in most cases, the data that I'm seeing will indicate that we're probably done for most blocks. Now, I'll get a little more into the details as we go through this, but it's really my hope that those sprays that went on for the 10 to 13 millimeter spray will finish the job and most people will be done. There are a few concerns that I have, particularly with Gala blocks, where it looked like they still were not thinned adequately, and those you might consider a rescue treatment. But there's still time to think about it and to try to look at the fruit set before you make a decision. Let's review what we've seen so far. Despite some early start of the season and some mild frosts and kings that appeared to be somewhat damaged, especially on Honeycrisp with shortened stems, there still appeared to be a very good set in Western New York. Even those damaged kings tended to set. Now, there are blocks where 50% of the kings ended up not persisting until now. But overall, I would say that we had very good luck and we got a really good set. Some people applied blossom thinning sprays, which did work. But most people started with a petal fall spray. And it turned out that this year, that petal fall spray, if you were on time, was just a perfect year for petal fall sprays. We had warm temperatures, we had a significant carbohydrate deficit, and we did get good thinning from that. Now, over the last week, I've seen data from a number of farms that showed that that petal fall spray gave us some substantial thinning and really, really helped. On the other side of the coin, the later spray, the 10 to 13 millimeter spray, was suggested to be, by the model, to be timed under relatively cool conditions last week, with temperatures in the 50s and low 60s and rain. At our meeting last week, I indicated that that was terrible thinning weather and no carbohydrate deficit, and we would have had a surplus, and we would have gotten very mild thinning, and many people needed thinning even after a very good petal fall spray, especially with Gala. And I suggested that if you could wait it out until after Sunday or on Memorial Day or after, even though the fruits would be relatively big, it would be a better timing. So my fourth point is that if you did wait and applied your normal spray under the warmer weather conditions of this week, Monday or Tuesday, or even today, there is a pretty decent carbohydrate deficit that's developed, and you should get relatively good thinning, even though the fruit size is quite large. Unfortunately, because of that cool weather last week, and because many people waited, the results of this 10 to 13 millimeter spray are totally unclear at the moment. We're going to have to wait until early next week to really see the results. The ones that were sprayed last week, because of the cool weather, you just don't see the fruit dropping as quickly, and it takes almost 12 days to see which fruits are going to drop from a cool weather spray. And those that were applied this week, of course, we won't be able to see the results until Sunday and Monday. But we're looking at quite a bit of heat coming on in the next few days. And that heat will really accelerate the results of the sprays that went on earlier this week. And we'll be able to tell by Monday of next week, really what the results were. I'll remind you that for timing of the last possible spray, we try to time it between 300 and 350 degree days. Now, if we look at the carbohydrate model and what results we have so far, I'll present two locations. First, Williamson. I'm going to focus first on the bottom part of this chart. And just to look at when we're going to get at the 300 degree days, that's going to be on June the 5th, a couple of 3 days from now. That's when we'll start into the window for this last thinning spray, but it goes all the way into June 7th, which is early next week. So the decision on whether or not to apply a rescue spray treatment could be delayed until Monday of next week. Now, that is going to be a relatively warm moment in time, 90 degrees, 88, 90, 89. And so there, we have to take that into consideration as well. But let's look at what's happened so far. If we look at the full bloom date, and there was a long period between bloom took forever to get done and to get to petal fall. But during that period of time between bloom and petal fall, we had a positive carbohydrate balance, but it started to turn negative just about the time we got to the petal fall timing. And we had a substantial warm period. And because of that warm period, that petal fall window between 100 and 130 degree days only lasted 3 days. Now, if you hit that window, you had this wonderful deficit to help you, and you would have gotten very, very good thinning. And I think many people did hit that window. Then things moderated and the deficit started to disappear, and we got back up so that at the 10 to 13 millimeter window, we really didn't have any deficit to speak of. We had these warm or cold temperatures and high carbohydrate levels. If you waited till the very end of that window and just outside that window, so Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, you would have now had some deficit. If we look forward, we don't really have big deficits, but it looks like over the next several days, we'll have some decent deficits. And then this window for the last thinning spray will open up depending on where you are. But for Williamson, it's going to open up on Thursday and go through Monday. Now, the model doesn't forecast the deficits that far forward just because we can't get a 7-day average. But if we just look down at the table at the bottom, we can see that in those June 6th, June 7th, June 8th, we're looking at daily deficits in the minus 20s. It won't be excessive. On June 3rd, we're looking at a much greater deficit because it's really going to be dark tomorrow. There's only forecasting, 7 megajoules of light, cloudy and dark, but relatively warm. But these other days coming up on June 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, we're going to have bright sunshine, even though it's going to be very, very warm. But that combined will give us only modest deficits right when we're in the window for a rescue treatment. Well, let's look at some data that Mario and the other extension people have collected yesterday and today. First, let's look at where we are in terms of fruit size in Wayne County. For inland sites, we're generally in the 16 millimeter range. Now, some of the bigger fruited varieties like Crispin are already getting 18 to 20. Ida Red also in that larger range. New York 2 and Gala are lagging behind, still 14 to 16. And then others in between, somewhere around 16. That was as of yesterday. Now, as the temperatures warm up into the 80s on the next few days, we'll start growing almost a millimeter a day. And so we will by Monday be way up into the 20 millimeter range. When you look at lake sites, it's a little bit smaller, basically 15 to 18. And so there's a little more time on the lake sites than there is on inland sites. If we look at Orleans County, the inland sites, there was only one, but it was approaching 19 millimeters for Gala on the Kings. The lake sites were a little bit smaller, but Honeycrisp was also around the 18. So we won't make this a very long presentation. I'll just give you my suggestions. I think that if you look forward based on degree days and looking at weather, for inland sites, you could spray as early as Friday, June 4th, and as late as Sunday, June 6th. If you sprayed your 10 millimeter spray last week, you can probably tell by Friday the results. It would be best if you had fruit growth rate measurements and could actually predict from the fruit growth rate model. But I think by Friday, you should be able to tell. And so Friday or Saturday are really your last opportunity if you really need a rescue spray treatment. For lake sites, it's basically one day later, starting on Saturday and going through Monday. I think you're going to need that up there on the lake to really determine the influence of the last spray that probably went on early this week. My suggestion is wait till the end of the week to get a better assessment of what happened with the last spray. Temperatures are going to be warm. And it will seem like it's a scary time to spray, but because of bright sunshine, and assuming that that really is the case, the deficits won't be excessive. And so it should still give some decent thinning if your fruits already are 18 or 19 millimeters. I want to remind you that once you get past 16 millimeters, and especially when you're at the 18 or 19 or 20, all thinners have reduced efficacy. I will pause and add that we're evaluating 2 additional new thinners, Exceed and Brevis, which seem to work better at this large fruit size timing than what we currently have available. But neither of them is registered this year. And so in the future, we may have more tools at this timing, but for this year, our tools are quite limited. Because the thinners don't have very good efficacy once you get to this fruit size, we have to use oil to improve uptake and action of these thinners. The addition of oil is sometimes complicated by the use of Captan as a fungicide. If you're going to add oil for rescue treatment, you should avoid putting Captan in your spray tank before, we like 7 days before, but at least 3 or 4 days before, or 7 days after. But I tell you that now because if you need to end up spraying next Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, don't use any more Captan until after, at least 7 days after that spray. Now, an important suggestion is that assuming you've sprayed other thinners before now, this last spray should only be directed to the top half of the tree. No thinner, no nozzle on the bottom half of the tree should be open. What are our options at the 18 millimeter? Well, there's really 4 options. 7 in oil is a fairly powerful thinner, and 7 continues to work when we get up to these fruit sizes. But an even better combination, and one that's worked the best for us of all 4 over the last several years when we've looked at this, has been Maxell 7 in oil. Now, NAA is really not very effective once fruits get past 16 millimeters. The fruits rapidly lose sensitivity to NAA. And so it's almost a combination that I don't think, I really wouldn't recommend it. Even if you've got Honeycrisp that need thinning, I would switch to a Maxell on 7 in oil spray for that fruits that are really large. Now, if you don't want to use carbaryl, it's really important at this time to have carbaryl. But if you're on a marketing program that doesn't allow carbaryl, then Maxell NAA and oil is the best option. Gale is the variety that seems like it's had and needs more thinning. And so if you were going to spray that on Friday or Saturday or Sunday or Monday, I would use Maxell at the 64-ounce rate with 1 pint of carbaryl and 1 pint of oil, but directed only to the top half of the tree. With Honeycrisp, I would switch. If you've been using an NAA-based program, if you still have way too many Honeycrisp, I would now switch to Maxell, but a slightly lower dose with a pint of carbaryl and a pint of oil. For Fuji, I always like a Maxell program from the beginning because I don't like NAA because of pygmy fruit. I would use the higher rate like we did with Gala, and Golden also the higher rate. Now we can talk about those sprays more, but I wanted just to end with this new recommendation that we've talked a little bit about last week, but I want to repeat it here. And the fruit team is publishing this more detailed recommendation in an article in their newsletter. But for many years, we've suggested that most biennial varieties be sprayed with 4 sprays during the summer, usually starting on the longest day of the year, June 21st. And we've suggested that you can either spray 4 sprays of ethereal at 1 pint per 100 or 10 parts of NAA. However, this has not been consistently working well for Honeycrisp. And I've thought for years, I wish we had something better. And I thought that probably it was because in some years, Honeycrisp just has too many apples, and these sprays can't overwhelm the GA produced by all those seeds when there's too many fruits. But with the work that Pollyanna did in her last couple of years here, I've started to think that probably it's also related to the fact that we're late. Honeycrisp has flower initiation earlier than June 21st, starting in the first week of June. So we're just now going to be entering the period of time when Honeycrisp start to have flower bud different initiation. And so we've devised a program a little bit based on experience of others. We've only done this really 1 year, but because of the importance of this, I think it's important to start to do this in most Honeycrisp blocks, especially those that are in the on year. Now, many blocks in Western New York are not in the on year in 2021, so possibly it's not that critical this year. But if you do have a relatively heavy crop, even if the bloom wasn't heavy, if you still have a relatively heavy crop of Honeycrisp, I would strongly suggest that you consider this new program. And that is to begin when fruits are 16 millimeters. That's probably this week. So a spray that might go on later this week should receive its first dose of ethereal. And then 3 additional sprays spaced 10 days apart. Now, this could result in some thinning, especially when temperatures are above 80 degrees. So aside from what we're facing this year, later this week, in most years, we would want to spike whatever cover spray we're spraying when fruits are between 16 and 20 with a half pint of ethereal. For the first 2 of these sprays, one around 16 to 20 millimeters and one around 22 to 25 millimeters, and then a third one around 30 millimeters, and then the fourth one around 35 to 37 millimeters. But the latter 2 sprays, once we get fruits past 25 millimeters, should be at a higher rate at 1 pint per 100. We're suggesting that that will take us to about the end of June with these ethereal sprays, but that you follow those ethereal sprays that should end by the end of June with 2 more additional sprays of 10 parts per million of NAA. I don't like to spray ethereal after the end of June on Honeycrisp because it can start to affect pre-harvest drop if it's sprayed in July. So I want to maybe emphasize that point. The last day of June is a cutoff for ethereal. Now, let me focus on the problem this particular year in 2021. We are facing high 80s and 90 degrees right at the time when this first ethereal spray should go on. That is a potential problem and could result in some thinning from these low doses of ethereal. The safest thing is to wait it out and put on this first dose of ethereal when temperatures are back in the 70s. And might be a few days later than what we want. but better that than risking having excessive thinning from these high temperatures with ethereal. An alternative would be to just argue that the dose is very low and that it really won't cause a problem. My suggestion is to wait because of these very high temperatures that are coming, even though I'm suggesting that in most years, this would be the week we would put on our first ethereal spray. So with that discussion, I'd like to end our presentation and open it up for questions. And thank you for your attendance all these many weeks that we've been talking about thinning and pruning. And I'd be happy to talk about any additional questions.
Thank you much, Terence. Folks can either unmute themselves and ask live, or they can put it in the chat box.
Hi, Terence. What if we just want to use a little more carbaryl on some varieties like New York 1, for example? Would that still need a little more of a penetrant?
Yes. So New York 1 is a little bit behind in fruit size, and so it might be 15 or 16 where you are, and you'll still get some thinning from just carbaryl alone. But I would suggest you add the little bit of oil. It will not create an over-thinning situation, but it will really help get some fruit off.
And is that 16 ounces per 100 gallons of tank water, or is that 16 ounces into the TRV formula?
No, just 16 ounces per gallon, 100 gallons of tank water. So on a 500-gallon sprayer, you're going to put 5 pints of oil. So I should maybe restate that. We sometimes forget to state some things that we've said over the years, but the oil is never concentrated. Likewise, I almost never concentrate carbaryl. That's just 1 pint per 100 gallons of tank water, no matter what you're spraying. Except for on an occasion, I could be convinced to add a second pint when I think I need just the additional carbaryl sitting out there on a leaf, hoping we get re-wetting. But I don't think so. I think just 1 pint of carbaryl per tank water and 1 pint of oil per 100 gallons of tank water.
Terence, if you're in the midst of a Provide program and you thin today, how many days would you prefer we wait? I get a little nervous about, doing that on the same day.
So I'm assuming we're talking about Sweet Tango, right?
No, actually Gala in New York 1.
Okay, so you're putting Provide on Gala, New York 1. Okay. Yeah, I would probably try to wait. If it went on today, I'd like to wait 3 days. So I think, Saturday would be the soonest I would go.
Okay, appreciate that.
Other questions, folks? We have time. Chat box or audio.
I want to just, while you're thinking of questions, just state that I really think that almost everybody doesn't need a rescue treatment. I think that these thinners that went on early this week are going to work. And I think everybody will end up pretty happy. So there could be some Gala blocks that we just don't get enough off and require a lot of hand thinning, and a rescue treatment would be very helpful. But the only way to really tell that is with fruit growth rate measurements. So I gave this presentation, but really deep down, I feel like that we're done.
But Terence, are in the data that you have been analyzing from Western New York for a Gala situation, most of those measurements are without bloom.
Well,
without bloom sprays.
No, I've had both. With Gala, we've looked at both blocks that had blossom thinning treatments and those that didn't. And the blossom thinning treatments look better, but they're still 2 times the target. So let's just assume that the target is 100. There's still a 200 plus fruits. That's just too much hand thinning. But I don't have any data showing the most recent spray. So the most recent spray would have, I think, bring us down to much closer to the target. And that's why I'm hopeful that people that waited to spray Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, they'll probably be fine and won't need a rescue treatment. I am concerned that those sprays that went on last week under the really cool weather maybe just didn't accomplish very much. But I got to see some data, the first and second. I haven't seen anybody that has given me first and second measurements after that spray that went on, say, Thursday or Friday of last week.
What's the biggest storm in Wayne County? I don't recall what was the grower were spraying on Thursday morning, and they lost all those thinning sprays with the rain that came like around 11, around noon. So that was a mess. Like it's a bunch of spray at the end of last week that didn't work out.
That's unfortunate. That's the worst of all worlds because it was cool and then it rained it off. You don't really know what effect you got, but I'm guessing very little.
Yeah.
And so in those cases, people, if they didn't come back and spray on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, they may need a rescue treatment. But I'm hoping that almost everybody is done.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to perhaps the last sunny, beautiful day afternoon for spraying Maxell was Wednesday, the 26th, at least in Wayne County. Yeah. That was a nice afternoon and growers were spraying. I know that.
But I don't have data for that date spray. Yeah. But even if it was a nice afternoon, Thursday and Friday and Saturday were just cold, terrible days. And so the physiological impact of that spray, I think, is very low.
So, Terence, we measured most of our trials on Monday, Memorial Day, and waited one day, extra day for Snapdragon. That was yesterday. What interval do I need before I go out and measure them again?
At least 3 days, but you could measure today and at least get an opinion or create a pretty good assessment.
It's not degree day based necessarily.
It is a degree day based thing, but if you need an early answer, better to measure early than miss a window. I should go back and look at that chart that I have there, how many degrees accumulated since Monday, but probably Thursday is probably the indicated day to take your second measurement.
Okay, that's tomorrow. We'll do that.
So I do want to thank Mark and Jill because they send me and let me see a lot of their data, and that's really been helpful. But I'm very interested to see what you find out, Mark, whether this meeting today was even needed or whether we're still in trouble. And anybody else that has data,
I'm glad it was available.
Send it to me. I'm sorry, but I missed what was said last.
No, I think this meeting was useful to have. There's a lot of information in our pocket, ready to go.
Aaron, can I ask you something about the on-farm measurements in Western New York?
Yes.
In your opinion, the growers who have been doing this have been increasing the numbers, or at this moment it's kind of the same group of growers who are getting the most of this technology? I don't know how you feel about it. Because we start doing this in 2013. I get the feeling that this year, perhaps we have less growers, but they don't copy me in all the emails that they send you the data. I don't know if this is the opportunity to encourage growers. Perhaps we are at the end, but it's an opportunity. I see it.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is fewer people this year. It's a technology that's cumbersome, but those who are doing it really, I think, end up with very sound information. And so it's some of the same ones that have been doing this all along. But a few that I had counted on have dropped away and haven't sent me data this year.
Yeah, I tell you, like I have a grower in this discussion that we had with Maxell on last Wednesday, and he was saying, I should have been measuring fruitlets. He didn't start with the trials, at least one side in Gila, and he felt so bad that he wasn't doing it. and he's in this call today. So I just want to use the opportunity to encourage growers, especially in Western New York. I recall in Italy, we have 15, 16, 20 sites in 2013, 14, 15. That number seems to decrease this year. But those growers that are using it and are learning how to do it, I think are getting a good benefit by doing it. So I want to encourage the grower to keep doing it in the future and invite more growers to join us, even though it's a ton of work.
Yeah, the vibe I get from talking to growers who aren't doing it is, the big thing is finding two people you can rely on. Sometimes they'll go back and count the same trees that the folks have counted, and the counts are off significantly. If you could find two dedicated people to go from block to block during that period, that would be ideal. I don't know, college students, could that work with the timing?
Yeah, you're right. And the people that are doing this successfully have identified those people, and they do the same thing every year, and they do a great job.
Yeah.
I think the phone app would be useful, because if you did find the two dedicated people, it'd keep somebody like the boss from having to stroke in all the data entry, which I find time consuming. But there was a glitch in that phone app, and you got to the third fruitlet and it would just freeze up, and you couldn't get the measurements in there. So it was kind of useless out in the field. So we had to adapt. Just my 2 cents.
Well, I appreciate that, Jason. That's a frustration for me too. And I had a guy from Eastern New York really lay into me about that phone app, and I keep trying to get the thing better. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but
there's definitely a better demeanor, and disposition on the west side.
But Terence, don't get it's good that we receive this feedback from the growers and from the extension people also trying to use the application, because still, Craig, I don't know, it's still still I am taking the data with the clipboard, and even this year, Craig,
Yeah,
I think so you have.
I mean, I'll
were
give
able
my
to solve the issue.
example. Yeah, in David Towers Orchard, when we did the bloom thinning trial on the Gala in 2019, the talk to text worked really good. So I could shout out the numbers into the app and it would spit them back. And every once in a while I get a number wrong and I can manually go in and change it. And this year I can't get the talk to text to work. And I have a good phone. So what I do is I use a voice recorder. It's extra time consuming, but I plop that on the ladder and I shout into it. I do 5 clusters at a time and I label the recordings. And then, and if there's a tractor that goes by, you have to yell a little bit louder. And then I double check it in my car. I play it through my car speakers, and then I record it onto the data sheets. And then if there's any number I missed or I'm not sure, then I can run right back into the orchard and make a quick measurement or two. It's still pretty quick overall when you get efficient. The big thing is labeling the clusters ahead of time, doing it at pink, if at all possible. It saves you a ton of time on those first measurements.
The technological breakthrough that'll lead to adoption is when the programming is sophisticated enough and the phone cameras are sophisticated enough so that it can be done with a series of photographs where you just go back and photograph, climb the tree and photograph. Now, to me, I don't necessarily think that's going to be faster. I just think that's going to lead to a further adoption of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we are pretty excited, although there's been some glitches. We're working with this company called Automated Fruit
Scouting
that is using that technology of phone cameras. And so our extension team is doing that this year. They've gotten frustrated because it's taken longer than measuring it by hand.
Yep.
But still, maybe that will be the solution for the future, because I expect them to even get better than what they've been able to do this year.
Also, there's a group in, I forget her name, young woman, the group in Canada, in New Brunswick.
Perennial.
Perennial, yes. They have an app out. They will do it with an apple, and suggesting that I try it, but I'm a little leery.
Yeah, their technology is not nearly as sophisticated as what this AFS is. And so it's really just a way to record the data, I think, but maybe they've got better than what I last saw from them. But
It looked like it might have been using a different program than Malusim, for example. So that's a problem.
Well, the basic calculations can be done by any program. What I've liked about the Malusim is that we can detect errors. And I have run data from growers again this year that didn't go through Malusim, and I continue to find errors. Some of those errors are not huge problems. They just change the predicted outcome by a few percent. But still, that's what this Malusim program offers, is once you can get it into that format, you can get the right answer out without too much worry. I just got to figure out how we can do the voice recognition piece better. But the phone camera idea of taking fruit pictures and sending them off to a website is very intriguing, and I'm very hopeful that that will also be maybe even a better and quicker way. Taking 375 pictures though, Mark, is not that easy either. It takes a lot of time.
Suck the battery on my phone really pretty quickly, and it's just the manipulating, because there's a little pixel card that you have to hold next to the fruitlet. So you got to push one fruitlet out of the way and have it next to it. And it really takes practice. And you could say, oh, we can do it with two people, but then two people on a ladder bending over the same cluster doesn't seem like it would work. But it really has a lot of potential, the way they're training the artificial intelligence to recognize the bulb part of the fruit, and they're calculating areas. And we're seeing if we can compare those areas to the measurements in our growth rates that we do from our fruit diameters. It's really interesting, but it is tedious and a little frustrating at the moment.
Can you share, Craig, like perhaps the way how you had to come back to the same almost position from the same fruitlet from the same cluster to try to enter the cluster in the same way than you did before?
So you upload them. You upload the pictures right from your phone, which sounds awesome. But if you take the pictures out of order, I mean, the sun's in your eyes. I did dots on my fruitlets like dye, so there's the difference between Terence's, and you don't have to label the individual fruitlets anymore. And this one, at least for the training phase, is you have to mark the individual fruitlets, and then you're supposed to take the picture in the same order. So I'm up on the ladder practicing, and I took the first one like fruitlet number 1, 2, 5, 4, 3, and then the second one was out of order as well. So every time I do pictures further down the lines, I'm supposed to take them in the same order. And then you're supposed to upload them in the same order. And you upload them right off your phone. You select the photos and then you share through their app. But then the app could crash if you're loading too many pictures. If you're all of a sudden use a portrait mode or take a video by accident and you don't recognize it, you can usually recognize the video. But on the iPhone, if you take it in portrait mode as opposed to photo mode, that'll cause the server to crash as you're uploading the photos. So there's a lot of things to be learned here and some growing pains. But I do see the potential, and I remember John Clements from UMass mentioning it this years ago. This technology, why can't we just take a picture? We use our smartphones for everything. So, I mean, I really like what Mark and Jill have developed with the clothespins, painting the clothespins like bright orange and labeling those instead of the flagging tape. I think that's genius. That saves me a ton of time. I haven't found a clothespin that's been knocked on the ground yet by a sprayer or anything, and just the system, I think, could really work well with the Malusim app, if we can do the talk to text. But
thank you, Greg, for the sharing. So I don't know, do we have more questions in the chat or somebody who want to ask something? We have a couple more minutes. Terence, I don't know if you want to mention something. If no, I think so we're going to summarize. Tomorrow we're going to send another fruit facts. We sent one this morning. We're going to summarize your main points there, and tomorrow morning we're going to have a YouTube video of this soon available as soon as possible. Also, I want to invite everybody to be part of the Honeycrisp meetup that we have tomorrow, Thursday at 7 p.m. To talk about crop load management. It's a new format, so everybody welcome. You can still register. It's free. It's going to be a ton of information, and we have another one on June 17th. And July 1st. So I don't know, Terence, it seems so we're gonna have some grower try Etro in in Honeycrisp. At least something is gonna be happening in Western New York. I have a few growers interested to try, to learn. Perhaps we're gonna be more cautious about the hot temperatures coming. So we're gonna be small demos, perhaps.
Okay. Well, this isn't the most critical year because most Honeycrisp blocks are not,
Yeah.
Totally overcropped, but next year will be the most critical year to put that ethereal in. Every cover spray in June. Okay.
Okay, so I think so great. We're done here.
Yeah.
Thank you for your attendance. Thank you, Terence, again for
Thank you much,
For being-
Terrence, for all of it.
being with us.
I want people to keep in mind that Terrence does this ×3. He does these for the Hudson Valley and the Champlain as well. And he's just been super flexible with all the grower schedules and our schedules. And we really, really appreciate it, Terrence.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye, guys.